Every now and then I have a list of old classic games that I haven't played yet, and I've just left sitting in my documents on the back burner. And honestly, for the past few months I've had Metal Gear Solid on my notes for a hot minute. I was thinking about covering it, but got overwhelmed by the sheer amount of games that this series has, for which one I should start with, and for just how outrageously old MGS1 is. I actually wasn't sure if you guys were exactly gonna care about me covering it, or if I was just gonna be wasting my time on a very old game for the sake of it. I knew that it was a fan favorite classic that is loved dearly by fans who grew up in the late 90s. Obviously for me, I can't relate to this because I was born in the 2000s, so don't take anything I say personally in this video because I have zero nostalgia for this game. But one thing I will say is that this game's good. I shit you not, I showed my older brother MGS1 on the PlayStation 5, and he looked at me like, what is this? This is gonna be the first ever game that I'm gonna be covering that came out in the 90s, so this should be fun. I'm also gonna start doing a little challenge to involve you guys more. I'm gonna start putting a random picture throughout the video, and whoever spots it first and comments it, I'll pin you at the top of the comment section. Is this a way to boost my engagement? Yes. Anyways, enough talking. Unlike most games of the PlayStation 1 era, Metal Gear Solid is actually Kojima's continuation of the actual Metal Gear series from Metal Gear 1 and 2 from 87 to 1990, instead of it just being a soft little reboot from its two titles. Anyways, from an outsider, I went into the game knowing that I was going to be walking into a completely different experience. Didn't know if it was going to be good or bad, but I obviously knew that it wasn't going to be a 3D open world game holding my hand with checkpoints and all that, alright? And it's funny because I think Metal Gear Solid is actually the first game ever to truly expose my gaming skills. Not that I'm really that good at video games, but it just put me out there way more. From just the unnecessary difficult boss fights, to its outdated mission designs and no sort of checkpoints, which can be pretty challenging 26 years later, because we're all used to games babying us nowadays, if we're being honest. There's quite a few elements of MGS1 that did quite surprise me in a lot of ways, starting with the voice actors that all have their own sort of style and personality, considering most PS1 games all had gamers reading off text boxes in the middle of awkward silence. The protagonist, Solid Snake, voiced by David Hayter, brought his own sort of badass trait in MGS1 rather than just a super generic voice to narrate.
What's wrong?
Nothing. I just didn't expect a world-class designer of military technology to be so cute.
You're just flattering me.
Think of how GTA 3 revolutionized games in 2001. GTA 1, London, and Grand Theft Auto 2 were good games for its time, but when Rockstar released GTA 3 that put a staple in gaming as a 3D sandbox game, it practically broke the gaming space. Obviously, Metal Gear Solid is technically considered a 2D top-down game, with the ability to switch between first-person mode that lets you observe your surroundings in certain scenarios, but it's not really that vague in terms of the actual gameplay. But that doesn't take away from the game's atmosphere. You see very few games depict sensitive things like nuclear war, trying to infiltrate and kill a bunch of terrorists from launching missiles. It just has such a dark tone that is loved by many fans. And even though the game is coming up on 27 years old, the game is still placed as one of the greatest games of all time, not even just for the PlayStation 1. And a quick look at its dedicated subreddit with over 290,000 active users, it proves that this game is still very much relevant. Don't ask why I'm banned on Reddit, I really don't know why. One of the first few things that this game does nail at is its intro. The intro scene of a game is more so the very first impression that the player is gonna see. If it's boring, well then the player is gonna most likely think that the entire game is mediocre. Games like Max Payne has a very gritty, grainy opening section that perfectly highlights how the entire mood of the game is. When the intro of MGS1 rolls in, it immediately introduces itself in a very grainy tone than the first two Metal Gear games. Even when the player is able to start controlling Solid Snake, credits still continue to roll in, which in a way feels more cinematic to how most games are nowadays. Another element of the game that I fairly enjoy is its stealth. Now, I'm not too certain on this, but I think Metal Gear Solid was one of the first major stealth games that completely popularized the genre, if I'm not mistaken. I'm probably full of crap, but I think it did. I know this might sound crazy, but I'm personally not a fan of stealth games. Games like Watch Dogs, Splinter Cell, or even the Hitman games, a lot of times they just get boring for me. That's not me saying that they're bad games, because they're definitely not, but they're just really not my style. Obviously, if I'm playing an open world game that isn't stealth but has some stealth in it, then it's not really a problem for me. It's just the games that their entire theme is stealth. But in Metal Gear Solid, it's I don't even know how to explain it. It's not super tactical like MGS5 or the Hitman series where it's, you know, realistic. It's fun to play around in MGS1 because virtually nothing about the game is grounded or anything. All you have to do is just not walk into the field of vision and you're chilling. Though the guards can see your footprints in the snow and will start tracking them, but if you just run away, you'll be fine. And really what I personally think is one of the main key reasons for why MGS1 is so loved by the player base is because Metal Gear Solid doesn't hinder on linear mission designs. Basically, when you're in the middle of a mission, there's like a million different ways you can complete it. You can go guns blazing, which will be very hard for you, but you can do that. You can go wherever you want, when you want, etc. If you look at modern games today, there's always a specific way the game wants you to do it, that if you step out of line because you don't like the way the game's forcing you to do it, you'll fail the mission. MGS1 lets you do it however you want. It gives you so much freedom that sometimes I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Sometimes I need to pull up a Metal Gear Solid YouTube guide because I'm lost. The game doesn't give you any directions on screen on what to do, you kidding? You have to quite literally internalize everything during the long drawn on cutscenes or codec conversations. And you have to sit through them even if they do get boring because they can go up to like 5 minutes. And yeah, they sure shit do get boring. Sometimes. It is pretty difficult trying to remember everything during these unskippable cutscenes that once it's over, you suddenly forget what they just said. And you have to be like me pulling up a Metal Gear Solid playthrough. Hey, shout out to SourceSpy91, because I had to walk through playing on my computer for my entire playthrough so I knew what I was doing. I think this just shows how much I'm not accustomed to these old games, because in 1998, there weren't any YouTube walkthroughs. Kojima just plops you into the game, tells you what to do, and it's a free-for-all from there. And these old mission design choices like not having linear mission designs really makes me appreciate modern games today because although I adore games like Red Dead Redemption 2, the missions are just so restrictive at times, which can be good and bad. I also do really appreciate how this game takes place 7 years in the future, game being released in 1998 but the actual setting of the game's story being set in 2005. Just think how strange it would be if Grand Theft Auto 6 was set in 2032. It essentially allowed the studio to come up with their own innovative ideas for MGS1, considering the entire Metal Gear Solid series was either set in the past or in the future. And obviously the elephant in the room is that the graphics clearly haven't held up 26 years later. I was very quickly able to get past these graphics and look more into the plot of the game and what it offers. The controls for the most part are your standard PS1 clunky controls. They're honestly not that bad since I was playing with a PlayStation 5 controller. Like, they're not that good, but they're not terrible. It's also interesting seeing how the game is set up, because Metal Gear Solid isn't like Metal Gear 1 and 2, where you can essentially see all of your surroundings wherever you are. The minimap in Solid is pretty much your best friend. It tells you where everything is and is your primary way to navigate around the facility that you're in. If you don't have access to the minimap, which is on the hardest difficulty, it is just a pain to play because you just cannot see shit. And he'll constantly get the living day scared out of you by accidentally alerting the guards. It's like the devs just put this in just to fuck with people. I swear, this alert thing makes me jump all the time. Even when I know it's coming, for some reason it always startles me. And I also did briefly mention boss fights and how ridiculously hard they are. Like, seriously, I get that it's an old game, but what's up with these old games making boss fights just borderline impossible to defeat? Seriously, the one with Gray Fox, I sat on that one for an entire day. I had done roughly 34 attempts, and I was almost gonna defeat him, and then my controller stalled for a second and I got killed. And keep in mind, when you die in this game, you have to restart the entire mission again. And most of the time, when you are deep in a mission and you die, it makes you want to take a 6-month break. And the game being a 2D top-down view also doesn't help for practicality when you try and shoot. There's no sort of auto aim or aim assist, so you just have to gamble that your shot is gonna hit your target. What the fuck? And I also can't help but feel that the camera angles are also a bit funky. Like, what I mean is that the camera angles will just change directions and pan to different angles by itself, sometimes even mid gunfight. Honestly, the game would be just fine if it stuck to the 2D top-down view rather than panning to different angles. That just makes the gameplay itself more challenging. But don't worry, because if you're not that good at the game like me, Metal Gear provides training missions that are dubbed the Metal Gear Solid VR missions. It helps you practice getting used to trying to avoid guards and just getting more fluent with the gameplay gameplay loop. I'm also not trying to make it seem like I'm just bitching about MGS1's gameplay features, and I know that there's going to be some dad in the comment section that's going to say something like, oh man, another youngster complained about an old game. Kids these days have no idea what they missed out on. Which, you're not wrong, but at the same time, it feels like in 2024, nothing about MGS1 is that meant to seemingly piss a new player off. But, on the flip side, I know that sometimes these elements in a way can take away from the actual heart of the game, but the difference with MGS1 is the heart of the game is these bullshit boss fights and clunky mechanics, you know? I mean, even with the game's cinematic cutscenes, you can see how clunky they are, which is why people love them. I mean, back then, most games had very stiff cutscenes with simple dialogue to read off, and Metal Gear Solid just completely revamped it. And, of course, the music in gaming is one of the more defining factors that elevates the actual experience. Adding a drop of badass music in either cutscenes or missions adds for an amazing experience. Games like Max Payne and Manhunt all combine fantastic soundtracks. And the Metal Gear Solid soundtrack is absolutely crisp. Firstly, you have the iconic intro scene, where the game opens up and compresses a very dark, ominous theme that represents what the entire tone of the game is. It almost feels like an intro to a feature film. Everything feels cinematic, which is merely captivated by the game's opening theme. And I was really surprised by Metal Gear Solid's use of music throughout the game. Considering this game is old as they come, not me saying that the game is old as shit, it uses music so often in missions and cutscenes, which back then most games didn't implement background music throughout the game because it just wasn't a common thing to do, but Metal Gear Solid does a very, very good job at it.
But I will kill him.
So, General Ivan, I hear he took your hand as well as your dignity.
There's always some sort of background music playing even if you're just roaming around the area, which makes the game not feel so empty versus if it was just completely silent. And this goes for... got you, didn't I? This goes for the Alerting the Guards theme that plays, and it goes for just the soundtrack that plays when Snake dies.
Snake, what happened? Snake! Snake!
I'm not sure how good the soundtrack is in the other Metal Gear Solid games. I have heard that they're also very good, but most of the fanbase agrees that MGS1 soundtrack is the better one, though I haven't played the other ones yet. But Metal Gear Solid represents pretty much the pinnacle of the stealth genre, and when the gaming space started diving more into gripping and structured storytelling that added use of character personalities than just lifeless characters that people cannot relate to. I very much do plan on covering the rest of the Metal Gear Solid games in the future. I do remember a few months ago, somebody recommended that I play Metal Gear Survive. Still debate if I should do that because I've heard that it's a piece of crap in the series, but who knows. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching to the end of this video. If you found the secret in this video, leave it in the comments down below and I'll pin whoever gets it first. I really did enjoy making this video, kind of enjoying going down this route of playing these classic games that are very much favored by a lot of people, and I hope you guys understand what I meant by I know this game is a part of many people's childhoods, and some people will literally die for it. I have no nostalgia for the game. I'm just a 17-year-old saying what I think about the game, so yeah. Thank you very much for the support again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. See ya.